The president helped the country narrowly avert default. However, it has not ended the debate over the nation's $14 trillion debt, with a T, and how best to bring it down. My next guest voted in favor of the final deal that raised the debt limit, but he says he would have preferred the original Cut, Cap, Balance Act that the House passed last week. He is Republican Congressman Chris Gibson. Congressman, thanks very much for being here.
Good to be with you again.
It is good to see you. Welcome home. After a rather protracted time in Washington, I'm sure it feels good to be back. The final agreement actually is not going to bring the country out of debt. The country is going to be in significant debt in 10 years still, and it may yet get downgraded. So why actually vote yes?
Well, look, as you mentioned in your previewing comments, I think what the country needed was cut, cap, and balance. This is a bill that passed about 10 days ago or so in the House of Representatives with bipartisan support.
Right.
5 Democrats also voted for that.
Well, wait, 5 Democrats isn't really bipartisan support.
Well,
do you believe that it is?
Well, I believe 5 representatives who were sent to the United States Congress with Democratic majorities thought that it was a positive step forward. I think that's important, especially when you consider that we needed 4 votes in the Senate in a final vote to get it to go to the president's desk. So, look, the point is that it died in the Senate. It didn't go anywhere. They tabled it. So, in a period of divided government, I think it's incumbent upon leadership to be able to get the best agreement that you can going forward. I was able to support this because, look, it was within the framework of cut, cap, and balance. It didn't go as far as we needed to go in terms of cut, cap, and balance, but you had immediate cuts that were done, and then over time, over 10 years, it had real enforceable caps. That was important to me. I didn't want future Congresses to be able to walk back on this deal, on this agreement that the American people needed. So it takes supermajorities to change this law. It's an enforceable cap to that spending. And there are going to be votes for the first time since 1995 on a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. So I think that that's important. Again, it wasn't everything that we needed, but look at the potential consequences had we not reached an agreement.
But to that point, the president basically says, well, and the Democrats, when we spoke to Congressman Paul Tonko yesterday, said, you know, this was a crisis that was manufactured by the House Republicans, by your conference, because there had been countless times that this debt ceiling was just simply raised as a pro forma vote under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, and this actually didn't need to be the showdown that we experienced. What's your response to that?
Well, it's not true. Take a look at the statements that came out of the credit rating agencies. They were very clear. They said, look, you will be downgraded if these circumstances occur. One is if we go into prioritization. Prioritization is a circumstance where we have more bills than we have revenue coming in, and that was identified as the 3rd of August. So that would have triggered a downgrade. Downgrade means higher interest rates, more joblessness, and ultimately more debt. That's number one. But the credit rating agencies also said that if you don't take meaningful steps towards reducing your deficit, structural cuts and structural changes to the way you're doing business, you're going to get downgraded.
Well, there were some cuts, actually, that the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, proposed, and you guys summarily rejected his proposal just like the Senate summarily rejected yours.
Actually, there was a lot of common ground between the cuts there.
There was,
But the difference was the Reid plan did not have the enforceable caps. It didn't have the kind of supermajority votes that you need, nor did it have a vote on the balanced budget.
Okay, Congressman, with all due respect, if you guys can barely get to a deal on debt, what makes you think that you're going to be able to get to a supermajority in the future? Don't you think that you just...
No, that's my point, though, is that we don't want to walk back on this. That's why the caps were important.
But you have to... What I'm saying is, what's to preclude another showdown of the sort that we just saw? Is this the new standard for government?
Well, look, I think what was important is that the leaders of both parties recognize the fact that in a period of divided government, we have to be able to come together and get the best agreement we possibly can that moves us in the right direction. And we did that. And look, it's important. I think we now have more time. Not a lot of time. We've got about 12 to 24 months to come together again with more savings, and we have to do it. But I would tell you that had we not reached an agreement, we would have faced immediate downgrade, and that's important to know because that would have had negative cascading effects all throughout American life.
What's it like to be in your conference when you guys are so dramatically influenced, if not controlled, by the conservative folks who are the quote-unquote Tea Partiers? I mean, what is that like?
Well, look, I think the American people sent a message that the issue that we have is we have a spending problem. When you take a look at the fact that we now spend 24% of our federal spending in relation to gross domestic product, that's an ill-disciplined level and unsustainable going forward.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. What I'm saying is that you have a small minority group of people in your conference who are able, almost single-handedly, to drive your conference to the right and to hold everybody else hostage while they tell the House Speaker, John Boehner, forget it, no, we're not going to do it.
Well, look what the final agreement was. The final agreement that was supported in a bipartisan way recognized the fact that we had to cut spending. And that's what we've done here. We've cut up to $2.4 trillion over 10 years' time. We have enforceable caps. We have a vote on a balanced budget amendment. It falls short of the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act that we needed. But in a period of divided government, our conference, which you're pointing to, our conference, in conjunction with Democrats, came together and reached this agreement. I think that that's important going forward.
Well, what is your view of the Tea Partiers, quote unquote? I mean, supposedly the Vice President now saying that he didn't call them terrorists, but certainly a lot of people are saying that they held America hostage, this small group of people, including one of your colleagues. I mean, Anne Marie Burkle voted no. She was the only Republican in the entire state to vote no on this bill.
You may recall, and at times when I've been here before, what I've said is I think that our country needs three things right now: job creation, deficit reduction, and protect our freedoms, an exceptional way of life. And I said that, look, regardless if you're a Republican, a conservative, an independent, a Tea Party movement follower, or a Democrat looking for a better way, if you believe in those three goals, you're on our team going forward. So I would tell you that there are those in the Tea Party movement right here in the 20th Congressional District that believe in those three goals. And so I'm proud to have their support, just as I'm proud to have the support of Democrats looking for a better way.
But certainly, I mean, you're also in a district that is fairly moderate, if you will. It used to be represented by a Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, actually. And so she was a blue dog at the time. Now she's a little bit more liberal. But you know, what about the idea that there are some people in the Tea Party movement who are members of your conference who say that they actually want a showdown with the president, that they would have preferred to have seen the government default, to have shut things down in order to make the point, to force the point on spending caps?
Well, ultimately, that was not the majority viewpoint in our conference,
well,
as you can see.
Ultimately, it came close, though. It looked like it was coming close.
Well, look, I mean, there were those that were, like myself, that were arguing that, look, let's get the best agreement that we can get in a period of divided government.
Is that hard? Is that hard to make that point? That's what I'm asking you. When you're in that conference and moderates like yourself say, hey, cooler heads need to prevail here, what's it like in that room?
Well, I'm sure it's similar to the way it is in the Democratic caucus. Have you seen the way liberals and progressives have responded?
I have seen that, yep.
You know, so I would tell you this is part of American life, and we're in a period, I think, of accentuated emotion over the course and direction of the country. And so what I think is important, my experience in leadership is, and I've been through some very difficult and challenging times in my life, it's important that you have a clear-eyed view of where you think the country needs to go, that you stay level-headed, that you communicate clearly, that you have resolve, and also recognition of the reality that you're in, and you move forward.
But are you worried about this divided government? Does that concern you, this dysfunction that for some reason got kicked from Albany down to the nation's capital?
Well, look, I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we came together, we got an agreement. It's a partial step in the right direction. There's more work that needs to be done, and I look forward to being part of that conversation going forward. And we absolutely must continue to work this. And going forward, we're going to need to identify more savings. We're at about 2009, generally speaking, across the departments. We're at discretionary spending. We're at 2009 spending levels. I have said all along, where we need to go is the 2008 spending levels, and then to cap there and go forward. And then also, we need fundamental tax reform. Look, we voted for this already in our GOP budget proposal. We got a situation where we have the second highest corporate tax rate in the world.
That's the Paul Ryan
yet we have some.
Right, that you're talking about?
We have the second highest corporate tax rate in the world, but yet we have some corporations that pay no tax.
Right.
So what we need to do is close budget loopholes, and then we need to reinvest those so that reinvest that money in lower marginal rates, because that helps our small business owners.
Okay,
we have small business owners that can't hire all the lawyers that corporations, and they don't get these loopholes. So this is the kind of fundamental tax reform that I think will grow the economy, create more jobs, and ultimately bring more revenues.
But you're talking about a plan that also called, a very controversial plan that called for the overhaul of entitlement programs. You're talking about health care spending that this debt deal didn't touch. Might touch, the bipartisan committee might eventually. It looks like you gotta, right? Don't you have to?
I would tell you that a lot of people in recent days and in recent weeks have focused in on the acrimony, the partisan divide, but I will tell you that I also saw moments of that I'm encouraged by. You had Senator Lieberman say that the fact of the matter is we can't save Medicare as we know it, but if we reform it, we can save it, we can protect it, and going forward.
He's one of the most conservative Democrats.
But President Obama and his spokesman said the same thing.
He also wants taxes. Or do you think you could go along with that?
No. I mean, I don't think it's the time to raise taxes. We have a spending problem. You take a look at the fact that I mentioned 24% of our expenditures, federal spending in relation to gross domestic product. We need to bring that back to a disciplined level below 20%. I think that that's the first step that we need to do before we talk about anything and put that on the table.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time because this is a fascinating discussion. However, I just want to point out this issue. The FAA impasse, the extension of funding for the FAA, didn't make it through. Now, you guys you voted for it.
Right. And so did Representative Owens and Representative
Fair
Hawkins.
enough. But what I'm saying is this symbolic of what we're going to see coming down the road? You can't agree on the FAA. Now you have 4,000 people and change who aren't working. You can't agree on maybe the gas tax is going to be another fight that you're going to have. I mean, is this, again, I return to this question, is this the new paradigm in Washington?
I think what needs to happen is leaders from the respective parties, from the respective chambers need to come together and figure out a way forward. As you mentioned, we passed an extension. There are a couple issues. We talked about this before the show. That there's the different versions, the House and Senate version, which are now being conferenced.
Right.
They have not reached agreement on the conference, but we passed in the House a temporary extension to make sure that we don't have the furloughs. We passed that. It had bipartisan support, 13 Democratic members, including Bill Owens from New York and Kathy Hochul from out in the Buffalo area, and it stalled in the Senate. So, I think that what we need to do is find a mediated point, a negotiated settlement, and then continue to move forward. That's what I want to see us do. But we have passed a version that keeps and keep in mind that TSA workers and air traffic controllers, they're not affected by this. I mean, that they are separate from this, and so
different funds.
The safety of our operations continue as we go forward.
Well, we will probably revisit that particular topic. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thanks for the opportunity.
My pleasure.
Bless you.